Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 36, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Thank you so much for joining me. So excited to be back with you. We have a great show today. After going over some of the big stories in the state, we have an awesome guest today, PBS personality and South Carolina native Darley Newman. She is a host of a show called Travels with Darley, which is now in its 9th season, which is pretty incredible. Even more impressive, in her career, Newman has earned 6 Daytime Emmy Award nominations, so I'm thrilled to speak with her today. The show that she has currently airs on SEE-TV on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. and on ETV World on Saturdays at 11 a.m. And one of this season's episodes is Charleston and the Liberty Trail, which is why we're having her here today, of course. That show is going to feature many awesome things in the South Carolina Low Country. That particular episode will broadcast on Wednesday, February 16th at 7:30 p.m. on ETV, and again on March 12th at 11 a.m. on ETVW. So excited to talk with her. Be sure to watch her show when it airs. It'll be quite interesting to see because her show, looks at some of the things that you might not see a lot in the national media and kind of digs deep into the culture. So really excited to hear what she has to say today. First, not too much going on in Holy City Center land. Same old, just working hard and trying to stay healthy. But no big updates this last week. I want to send a congratulations to 2 former guests, Emily Heinz with Sachet. They are going to be opening on King Street on Valentine's Day, so congratulations to them. I will share more details when I have it. But they were going to have a shop to sell these, non-alcoholic, alcohol-free beverages and things. And congrats to Charleston Wine Company, the first urban winery in Charleston. They will be opening when I'm recording this, by the time you hear it, they will be open. So be sure to go check them out. So congrats to both of them. That's really cool that after speaking with them, they're finally open and ready to roll. All right, so there's lots of stuff going on. We're in the new year, and politics is normal. All sorts of different things are going on, and there's a lot to cover because there's so many bills and proposals and discussions going on. I mentioned that last week, and so we're going to touch on some of the things that are going on right now. The first one is that Republicans in the South Carolina House of Representatives did vote to approve a congressional lines update, and it was already backed by their Senate counterparts. And it will basically, according to the Post and Courier article from January 26th, it should solidify the GOP's 6-1 seat majority in South Carolina's U.S. House delegation for the next decade. So, basically this is gerrymandering. This is not anything new. This happens all the time, and it's both parties. I want to make sure that's clear because a similar story is going on in New York where Democrats have done something similar. So this happens when the census comes out. States can, redraw district lines. They can make adjustments. They may be able to add seats depending on if there's population growth. And so this is nothing new, but it's disappointing no matter what party you represent. And again, both parties do this. It just depends on the state. So it just happens to be in South Carolina that Republicans control, and they're making it with these new lines that have been drawn that Henry McMaster, our governor, is expected to sign. It's just going to solidify the control they already have. So as I mentioned, these lines were redrawn to reflect the changes in population documented from the 2020 census, which did show that the state's population has grown nearly 10.7% in the last decade. So that's when the last census was. So Republicans say they drew these boundaries to reflect the population growth without interrupting, constituent services. Meanwhile, critics say that the plan intentionally carves out large populations of black voters from a competitive region. So, for instance, Nancy Mace in District 1, these redrawn lines is taking out a lot of black voters, from black neighborhoods in the, this area, and putting them in the 6th congressional district, which is represented by Jim Clyburn, who's a Democrat. So although they may be helping his district, they're also assisting Nancy Mace and any Republicans running in District 1 to make it even easier for them to win that district. And again, this happens everywhere, but this is this is a podcast about Charleston, so we're talking about South Carolina. So Democrats here have previously indicated they intend to sue over these new maps, which they say are clearly gerrymandered. They're giving an unfair advantage to Republicans. So far, nothing has been filed, but, we'll see if anything does. And this is just another reminder that elections matter. I'm sure people here who are Republicans or conservatives or support those candidates, they probably hear this and shrug. And I'm sure Democrats in, states that are very blue do the same thing, like, meh, whatever. But try to think of yourself if you're in that role. Think of from the other perspective. You're already in a state where one party dominates and they're just making it easier to dominate. Gerrymandering obviously is not okay, and yet we allow it to happen in multiple states. So, again, both parties do it. It's a problem no matter who you support. And here in South Carolina, there is very much a problem with gerrymandering, and it just got worse. So that's where we're at with that. I'll let you know if there's any updates. Next is a story about the committee we've talked about a lot, the Racial Conciliation Commission. Back on the 25th of January, the Post and Courier updated a post. We're a little late on this, but we had a lot to cover last week. The city of Charleston decided to defer the Racial Conciliation Commission to the next meeting, which when you hear this episode, it should come out on Monday. The next day, Tuesday, is when they're actually going to bring this up for a vote again. So by that time, unfortunately, it'd be too late for anybody to submit comment or anything. But they did decide to defer to this meeting here in February because there's some amendments they want to add to this commission. So after months of debate and hours of public comment, the council voted 7-5 on the 25th of January to defer a final vote on forming the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission. The amendments included a list of changes to the ordinance that changed how members are appointed. It limits the terms that members can have and what things they can discuss when they're on this commission. And although the amendments were not posted publicly because council had to vote on them first, there's not a lot of details that we know at this point. But long story short, they voted to kind of postpone a final decision until this upcoming meeting. So disappointing that city council just continues to kind of punt this down the road. Let's just cover it next month. We got some updates. Let's cover it next month. And, there's lots of different disinformation out there that says that this commission wants to defund the police and they want to promote critical race theory in schools and all these buzzwords that don't really mean anything because most people don't understand them. There's a lot of disinformation out there trying to spook people, and that's not at all what this commission is doing. So, I'm giving you an update. Unfortunately, by the time you hear this, it'll be too late for you to submit comment. You have until Monday at noon before the Tuesday meeting. So there's a chance you can submit comment to City Council and let them know you want this to be passed. Just start ignoring the disinformation and this small minority of people who are very vocal about not wanting the commission. And let's get this thing passed because we need to have some things in place to make sure things are more fair for every single person in Charleston. All right, next up, Post and Courier is where I'm getting this information from January 26th. It's being covered all sorts of places, but they always do a really good job of getting the details. So we talked about this a little bit last year. There's been some abortion-related bills that have been brought up, including the heartbeat bill from last year, you may remember. Some lawmakers are back at it again. Republicans on the state Senate panel advanced a pair of anti-abortion bills, despite criticism from medical and legal experts, that the legislation could potentially harm patients. So I don't want to kind of relitigate what I did a year ago, but there was an episode where we talked about the heartbeat bill and how I tried to let people know that this doesn't have to be an argument between people who are pro-abortion or anti-abortion or pro-choice, anti-choice. There are actual data and figures that back up that abortion, outlawing abortion or similar bills don't work. And if you actually want to lower abortion rates, there's proven information of all sorts of different methods that people can take. And of course, South Carolina lawmakers decide not to, including, sex ed in schools that has to be medically accurate, believe it or not. In many states, including ours, sex ed in schools does not have to be medically accurate. They do not have to provide accurate information to children. Other places teach abstinence only. It's been proven through data that children, high school students, whatever, that are given true and accurate information are less likely to have an abortion. They're educated. They understand this. So you can go back and listen. You can also search this. Abortion bills don't work is the bottom line. And again, regardless of what you feel about abortion, these things don't work. So if you're someone who thinks that there should be no abortion in this state, know that there's better ways to accomplish your goal of not having as many abortions, or any for that matter. So putting that aside, I'm not going to go back into all of that from last year, but back to today. So these two bills that went out there, one of the measures would charge doctors who perform abortions with murder if there's ever a repeal of federal laws protecting abortion access. This is what they've kind of named a trigger law. So if Roe v. Wade is overturned on the federal level, this would automatically, make abortions illegal in South Carolina and would immediately put these procedures into place, which includes, again, doctors who have performed abortions being charged with murder. So there's that bill. The other bill, which has gotten even more pushback, would require women who decide to take abortion drugs to receive information about a non-FDA approved abortion reversal treatment. So this one blows my mind. So the reversal treatment, it involves a controversial and, again, non-FDA approved procedure to use a drug, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but progesterone, probably mispronounced that, but that drug is used to, quote unquote, reverse a pharmaceutical induced abortion. So, so if someone currently in South Carolina wants to have an abortion, depending on the time frame, they can have some medication that they can take that will make that happen. So supposedly this drug can reverse that. The problem, of course, is that it's not FDA approved. It's controversial. And numerous OBGYNs testified that attempts at clinical trials of this procedure had produced negative results for patients, including an increased risk of excessive hemorrhaging. So some of the same people who were up in arms about a COVID vaccine because it wasn't FDA approved right away are thinking that this is a good idea, that doctors should tell women about a non-FDA approved procedure that has not been proven to work and can cause damage to people, that doctors are going to be required to tell them about this procedure. They're going to be mandated to talk about an unproven treatment. That this blows my mind. And again, even if you're someone who thinks that abortion should be illegal, I don't know how you could support something like this, that there is no scientific or medical information that makes this an accurate or logical thing for someone to do. It is unreal. So both of these bills were advanced by a subcommittee of the Senate Medical Affairs Committee. This was back on January 26th, so they're still in the work. It was just a subcommittee. These committees hear these things, and they decide if it moves forward. They decided to move forward. The committee, for those who are interested, included 4 Republicans and 2 Democrats. The 4 Republicans on the committee, all men, voted in favor of both bills. The 2 Democrats voted against it. The 2 Democrats, 1 woman, 1 man on that committee. So on this committee of 6 people, there's 1 woman, and 4 of the 5 men voted in favor of both bills. So basically a committee of almost essentially all men have decided what women can do or not do with their bodies. So that's where we're at with that. As I mentioned, mandating this promotion of an unproven treatment to reverse an abortion would basically be the same as lying to your patients, which is against the Hippocratic Oath. Doctors are supposed to tell patients medically accurate information and give them the best information for their health. And that bill would do the exact opposite of that. It would undermine their ability to provide ethical treatments for those undergoing the procedure. It's just a bonkers. And again, I know a lot of times when we talk about abortion, things get kind of weighed down because people, they've already taken a side, so if you think there should be no abortion, you don't care what the laws or proposals are. You just say, yeah, whatever, as long as it gets rid of abortions. But there are ways to lower that don't involve these ridiculous laws and things that are not good for patients. And that's what I want people to think about in this conversation. This isn't a, hey, you should change your mind about what you think about abortion. There's better ways to accomplish these things. So that's kind of what I wanted to highlight. That the two bills, if you're interested, are S988 and S907. You can Google and learn more about each. Also, if you want to reach out to any local lawmakers to let them know, you can do that. If you're not sure who you should reach out to, there's a local organization here in South Carolina called WREN, WREN. You can go to their website. They have all sorts of information, including like an easy form where you just like put in your address and your name and stuff, and it will send, based on your address, it'll send like a pre-written email to your representative. So that's a great way to do it as well. All right. A lot of blah politics. So let's talk about something fun before we get into our interview, which will also be fun. This past couple weeks, I've just been like bogged down with concert announcements because the Credit One Stadium, which is out on Daniel Island, it's the tennis stadium, most recently known as the Volvo Car Stadium. And then prior to that, I think was a Family Circle Stadium named after that comic strip. But anyway, it's the tennis stadium on Daniel Island. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. They have undergone some renovations, and they have made a ton of announcements. I mean, listen to these shows that have been announced in addition to the newly named Credit One Charleston Open, the women's tennis tournament that will be here later in the year. But they're going to have a bunch of concerts with some huge names. A lot of them are country artists, but there are some others as well. Thomas Rhett will be there. Zach Brown Band will also be performing there in April. Miranda Lambert and Little Big Town will be doing a show together in May 12th. Revolution, which is a kind of like a reggae band, they will be there in June. The Black Keys and Band of Horses will play a show there, which I'm sure will sell out. They'll be joined by Early James. The Dave Matthews Band will play back-to-back nights in June, the first time they've ever played back-to-back nights in the state of South Carolina. And the first time they've been here since 2016. Although Dave and guitarist Tim Reynolds did a acoustic show in 2019 at the venue. This will be the first full band performance since 2016. Country music superstar Kenny Chesney is also going to be performing at that venue. And then finally, the last announcement that was made over the last couple of weeks, Jason Isbell and the 400 unit will be performing a co-headlining show with Sheryl Crow. So some big names coming to Daniel Island. You know, they've had some big shows in the past, but I was excited to see all these announcements happening for many reasons. There's a lot of good acts that I hope to catch. I can't wait to see the renovations that they've made. And it's just like giving me this sense of like life is normal, even though it isn't yet. It's feeling that way with all these concerts and things coming back. So I wanted to close out by letting folks know some good news about shows and things that are coming here. In addition to that, I mentioned previously that the Music Farm is reopening. They're starting to announce shows as well, including a pre-High Water Festival show with Shovels and Rope on April 22nd. So they've got some big shows coming too. So just loving these awesome acts coming through and things improving and things getting back to normal. It's really exciting. So with that, wanted to have some good news, and then we'll go into this interview, which is also a lot of fun. I know you guys are going to really enjoy this. I learned a lot about Darley Newman, our guest. She is a PBS personality. She's also a South Carolina native. She currently hosts a show called Travels with Darley, which is now in its 9th season. Incredibly, she has earned 6 Daytime Emmy Award nominations for her work throughout her career. So you know she's doing amazing stuff. The show airs on SCE TV on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. and on ETV World on Saturdays at 11 a.m. You can also catch some of her old episodes streaming on multiple platforms, which she talked about. But we're specifically talking to Darley today because she has this season she has an episode called Charleston and the Liberty Trail, which is going to feature all sorts of things in the South Carolina Low Country, including here in Charleston. That episode will broadcast on Wednesday, February 16th at 7:30 p.m. on ETV. You can catch it again on March 12th at 11 a.m. on ETVW. And again, a lot of these shows are streaming, so you can catch it. If you miss it live, you should be able to catch it at some point in time. But we learned a lot about her show, and I'm so excited for you to all hear my interview with Darley Newman. So here we go. Joining me now is this week's guest, PBS personality and South Carolina native, Darley Newman. She is currently the host of a show called Travels with Darley, which is now in its 9th season. And specifically, they have an episode about Charleston, the South Carolina Low Country, that will broadcast on the 16th of this month. So I'm so excited to talk about that as well as all things in her world. Darley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Christian. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see this episode, about Charleston and the Low Country in general. And you yourself are a South Carolina native. So can you tell me a little bit about, where you were born, where you grew up, and what your ties to South Carolina are still?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up right down the road from Charleston in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And actually, I've been to Charleston a bunch because we would always go there to eat.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Because the food is so good in Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a beautiful city. So it was really fun to be back there this past fall to film for a PBS episode. I ran into a bunch of people I knew from childhood and also got to eat at some really great restaurants. So we were excited to be back in Charleston.
Very nice. How long did you live in South Carolina?
I was in South Carolina, up till college, really. I went to a boarding school for high school, so I was just there during the summers during high school, but grew up just a block from the beach and, loved to do all things golf, surfing,
oh, yeah,
being
of
in the
course.
ocean, being at the beach, tennis. So just like outdoorsy things in general, which I feel like help prepare me for what I do now, because in my show, I'm often doing all sorts of adventure activities. And I feel like my training, I guess I would call it, in South Carolina really helped.
Yeah, it's nice to live pretty close to the beach, and any part of South Carolina, you're relatively close to so many things, whether it's a city or a beach, or there's always so much to do. So not surprised to hear that you enjoyed your time there. And, so you grew up here, and then, you eventually leave South Carolina, you start your career. Can you give my listeners kind of an overview of your career? Obviously you do lots of traveling, you've been to different countries, you've done multiple shows. Can you kind of just give an overview of what you've done?
Yeah, recently we finished our 51st half hour of the Travels with Darley series, which is on PBS stations, and it's also on a bunch of streaming networks now, Ovation TV and Amazon Fire, Roku, all those places. But before that, I also did a series called Equitrekking, where I went horseback riding around the world for many years. And I studied radio and television in DC in college at GW, George Washington University, and really just wanted to do something creative. I was hoping I'd be able to see the world in whatever I started to do. And I started these series myself and have just really done them in a more entrepreneurial way. But it's all about great storytelling. And I found over the years that there's just so many great stories to tell in so many locations. When we did Charleston, it was this episode in the Low Country's focus on the Liberty Trail, which is a new trail throughout the state that covers Revolutionary War sites in history. And so there's just every place has a different story to tell. I could probably come back to Charleston 17 times and not tell all the different stories that lie within one area. So I find myself globetrotting to different places and sometimes coming back again and again.
Nice. Yeah, I know. There's so much here, having the website and that I have and there's always something that people aren't talking about, something going on. And, it's difficult enough for me. Like I live here, so I kind of, I know people, I see things, but for you having to go into a completely new city that you may have never been in before, is it difficult to kind of find what, locals do or what's more underground versus the things you see on, websites or magazines or whatever about the top things to do? Is it hard to kind of find those hidden gems?
The thing about it is there's so many different hidden gems in everywhere. A lot of times I'm in off the beaten path locations on our series. So I've gone to places that people just don't think about traveling. But then a place like Charleston, I mean, there would be so many stories, but for this content, we did focus on Revolutionary War history, which people may think, oh, that's so far in the past, it doesn't apply. But we found that you can trace it through to some of the local restaurants. Like we went to the grocery where they're serving this Carolina gold rice, which we traced over to Hampton Plantation and visited there. So we kind of did a through line of like, where do we find this modern history? Where is it actually modern and where can we see it in the past? And where can we actually taste it and do all of those interesting things? And I am always impressed by local entrepreneurs, which we found so many of in Charleston that were doing such dynamic things. So I always try to find local business owners because I have a small business myself. And I think it's really neat to highlight those stories. And then through those people, we often meet other people that we want to then, speak with or have to be part of our episodes.
Nice. Yeah. And, sort of backtracking a little bit, how did this show come to be? And then what were your goals setting out when you wanted to create, Travels with Darley?
So I actually started this on the heels of my eco trekking show. I was doing this show for many years where I went around the world on horseback and I was doing other things in that show. I mean, I did surfing in Northern Ireland, snowmobiling in Iceland, a lot of adventure stuff, tree climbing in Costa Rica. And so I was kind of combining a lot of, yeah, I know, right? I was combining a lot of different things in different locations, but the main theme of each episode was that I was traveling with locals and getting to know a place through their eyes. And that carries over into Travels with Darley. So I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to, not do everything on horseback in this next series and really open it up. And for this season we just did, COVID was happening and still is. And so it did restrict us to be in the US. So we said, well, let's look at what would be a cool, theme for the US, which we thought was these trails and road trips that are really epic. I mean, the Liberty Trail goes throughout the state. We also did New York's Empire State Trail, which runs from New York City to the Canadian border. I did the Civil Rights Trail in Alabama in this season, which is a huge trail that's covering all this really interesting history. So we kind of looked at it and said, okay, we're going to do epic trails and road trips and theme it that way, and really, cover the U.S. in a different way. So that's sort of what we decided to do on this season.
Very nice. And yeah, I would imagine, especially that you mentioned COVID, after these last few years, once things get back to whatever normal will be, and people start traveling more than normal, I'm sure, they're going to be so excited to check out all these things and, we got to get back out on the road. So it's giving a nice, lots of good suggestions for people who may be looking for their next road trip too, just ready to get out there and explore. And I think people are starting to get back to that. But yeah, I think people will see things in your show and be like, wow, I should check that out. That seems pretty cool. Cause it's like a lot of the stuff are things that you don't hear about all the time. It's not the big, events and things that are covered in newspapers or whatnot. Like you said, it's a lot of things that locals are involved with. So yeah, I think a lot of people will enjoy, of course, the South Carolina episode for my listeners, because they're from here, but for if they plan on traveling too, all these other trails and things. And I would imagine a lot of these trails there's a lot of like free things you can do are pretty inexpensive as well.
That's the great thing about it. A lot of the destinations, for instance, even outside of Charleston, we were in the Francis Marion National Forest. And, I went kayaking with Coastal Expeditions and Chris Crawley, but you could just go out on your own kayak or go out hiking and explore these different locations. So they are places that are free. And a lot of times what we try to find are those outdoor adventure places where you can learn about history, but there's no entrance fee to a lot of them, and they're accessible if you just get in your car or have someone else drive you or ride your bike. So there's a lot of different ways to experience them, which is great for groups and families and people who are really just looking to have adventures in their own backyards.
Very nice. And you're from South Carolina, so I know you were excited to come back and do an episode here about the state. And I'm sure there's some things you had in mind coming into it. But was there any like particular person or site that you saw or anything that you did while you were here that you were kind of surprised by, or you think is going to be a highlight of the South Carolina episode? Anything that that you didn't expect going into the show that you thought was pretty neat?
There's so much, because I mean, that's what we were trying to do in different places. I was really interested. Mepkin Abbey we went to, and again, that's a place where you could go out and you can walk around the grounds there. They're open to the public, but there's also, you can do like a monastery stay there, and actually stay at the Abbey, and it's beautiful. There's Spanish moss all over the trees. I mean, it's very peaceful. So I thought that was pretty neat. I loved T.W. Graham and Company in McClellanville. I just thought McClellanville was really interesting to me. I kind of thought, oh, maybe I should come back here and rent a house for a bit just to do like a little staycation, because I just thought it was a neat little place to stay and be. But the food there was really good. The different museums that we got to visit were awesome, but a lot of the sites that you'll see in the episode that are related to the Revolutionary War aren't that well known. There's ruins, there's churches, and there's places that just have this rich history that I feel is not totally discovered. So I think that's something that's neat about it. The food again was amazing, and I got to go to Gilly's Seafood, and I met Chef Sean Mendez, and I put a photo of my grandmother on his wall.
Oh yes, the wall of grandmas.
He's a wall of grandmas, and I just really wanted to do that. I thought that was so cool and just so neat to pay a tribute to relatives and the fact that he learned how to cook from his grandmother. So I thought the story was really special there, and his food was awesome. Yeah. So there were a lot of interesting things.
Their food is great. I actually live like essentially across the street from Gilly's, and I ordered it like a week ago, and yeah, their food is so good, Southern, and yeah, I love the Wall of Grandmas. My folks came to visit me, and I went in there with my mom. I was like, we got to get you on the Wall of Grandmas, because my brother's got kids. I'm like, we need to get you on there. It's a pretty cool thing over here on James Island. But I'm also glad that you mentioned Mebkin Abbey, because I was going to ask you about that. I was lucky enough during one of the Charleston Wine and Food Festivals to go to an event at Mebkin Abbey, and I've heard about it. But for those who don't know, it's this Trappist monastery in Monk's Corner. A beautiful property, as you mentioned. And yeah, you can go there to be a monk. You can study. There's this whole religious aspect to it. But they have this beautiful property with multiple buildings, including like a library, and they're right on the water. And it's just like this really cool place. And they also grow their own mushrooms there. Mebkin Abbey mushrooms, which you can find in certain places around South Carolina. So it's like this really cool place. I'm glad you talked about that. Were you able to see like the mushroom grow houses or anything like that?
So we didn't get to do the mushrooms while we were there, but a lot of people don't know that it has this also the Revolutionary War history, which I thought was really interesting, because we were there. I was there with David Ruhr, who's an expert, and we took a walk around the property, and there's the musical Hamilton. There's like relations to the musical Hamilton, and there's a lot of interesting. Like, it was owned by Henry Lawrence, who was a merchant and slave trader during the Revolutionary War, and he was later vice president of South Carolina. So there's this rich South Carolina history, along with what you're talking about with this, Trappist monastery and all of that history. So you combine those things, and I think it makes for a really interesting visit if you start to dig a little deeper when you're there, and you can go to the one of the Lawrence family grave sites. So there's a lot of different things you can do when you're there, besides the fact that it's just simply beautiful and a great place to kind of get off the grid and think a little bit about other things in life.
Absolutely. I know it's a beautiful property. If anyone listening has a chance to go there, you should definitely do it. I don't think they've opened like the mushroom, grow area to the public, but you can still see this beautiful property and still kind of learn about what the monks do there. So be sure to check that out. But I also like that you've kind of focused on the Revolutionary War, because when it comes to South Carolina and Charleston in particular, Civil War kind of like dominates the tourist destinations and things, everything, especially in Charleston, because there's just so much important history involving the Civil War that we kind of forget there's a lot of Revolutionary War tie-ins to this area as well. So I think that's cool that you decided to kind of focus on that versus, say, like a lot of Civil War stuff that people are already familiar with when it comes to Charleston and the Low Country. Revolutionary War doesn't get as much coverage or talked about. So I think that's really interesting that you focused on that, because I don't think a lot of people necessarily know the history here.
Well, what's really interesting, even right in France, in Marion Square Park, I went out with Dr. Nick Butler. He's with the Charleston County Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, people probably walk by this and don't even know what it is, but there's something called the Hornwork there. And it's the remnants of what was once a massive fortress. It was around like 10 acres in size, and you can see what's left there. And it just looks like, a mound of kind of cement and shells. But if you watch the episode, I think you will be surprised at what you walk around every day and what's underneath, Charleston really, and all that history, which is right there. So that was pretty cool to see kind of this mound of oyster shells that's sitting there that reminds us of this history that happened, amid these beautiful historic homes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Marion Square, for those listening, it's closest to the King Street side, and it's gated off. Like you said, it's like this cement, oyster, some kind of mix that's left there from that, from what used to stand there. So if you're on the King Street side, you should be able to see that. It's pretty noticeable by the trees there. So for anybody listening, you can go see that, and there's like a little plaque there, and you can learn all about it. But of course, also watch the show, or you can learn about it as well. So we've been focused on South Carolina, but obviously your show, having been on for 9 seasons, has been all over the globe, and you've done so many cool things. You've mentioned a few now. Is there one or even a few, I would imagine, because I'm sure there's countless cool moments and awesome memories that you've had from doing the show. Is there anything, whether it's from this season or the past, that really just stands out to you as just like, wow, that was such a cool moment that I got to do?
There's so many, because I've had, in the last season, the one before this one, where I did do a lot more international locations, I was able to do all of these extreme adventure activities. So that season really stands out because I was in Macau, China, and did the world's highest commercial bungee, which is freaky because you're bungee jumping like over concrete. You're in an urban environment, so it's a little scary, and it's really high. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. And I did that. I don't know why, like what I was thinking, but that was pretty wild. And that season I also swam with sharks in Dubai, but in the mall, in an aquarium. They had me in a cage. It was really weird. I did the world's highest commercial climbing wall, and I don't ever do climbing stuff. So it was like a challenge season, but that stands out to me because I feel like now, after doing all those things and like experience them and telling people like what it's like to experience them, I feel very much like, oh, I can do anything, or I would try anything apparently. But it was a really cool season. And then getting to travel the world and taste all of these great foods in different locations and meet people is just really awesome, and makes you appreciate our world and what you have at home and what you can experience when you go away. That's
so great. Traditional journalists, you think of people like they're not the story, they're just sharing what's happening. They're not, participating in events and things. And then this kind of journalism and where you have your own show and you're able to actually participate and take part in these things. When you were, studying media and getting ready to start this career, did you ever think you'd be able to do all these crazy and wild things that you've been able to do?
I didn't predict all the things I would get to do, honestly. I knew I really wanted to have an adventurous life and get to explore, and I wanted to travel. I came up with these shows in order to get to do that.
Right.
But I had no idea that I would be doing some of the things that I've been able to do and then share with people. And I know so many people that I hear from that watch the show and they go and try these things themselves
Oh,
because
cool.
most of them are open to the public. And you can go and do them, which is kind of cool. So we try to show people like the monastery in South Carolina. There's another one in New Mexico, which is really neat that you can stay in along the Rio Chama. You can go whitewater rafting and stay in a monastery. There's a lot of cool things out there if you just scratch a little bit below the surface and take a closer look at those places outside of the city. Sometimes they have a lot to offer.
That's so great. And I think the answer to my next question is probably no, but you're talking about these things like bungee jumping. Is there anything that you've ever been presented with, or they're like, hey, you should do this for a show, and you're just like, no, I can't do that. Like, that is too much. I'm too nervous. I'm too scared. I mean, I'm guessing no, because you've did this like world's biggest bungee jump or whatever the official title is.
Yeah.
But has there been anything that you're like, I can't? And you've swam with sharks, so I feel like you're not scared of much. But has there been anything?
Not yet, and I don't know what's going on, but I mean, I just got asked to do ice climbing coming up in Quebec, and I said, oh, okay, and I didn't even think about it before I said yes, and then I thought about it, and I told a friend, and my friend said, isn't that dangerous? And I said, I better look into that. I think it sounds dangerous.
So what's ice climbing? Is it like mountain climbing, but obviously everything's all snowy and icy?
Yeah, and I think this one is on a frozen waterfall, so.
Oh, wow. That's going to be incredible to see. I don't know. I don't have the guts to do some of the stuff you mentioned, but that's going to be a beautiful sight to see, I'm sure.
I think it'll be cool. I mean, why not?
Yeah, right?
Maybe in a year or two, I won't want to do this anymore, but for now.
So you have these over the top, exciting things that you do, and then you have some kind of low key things. But regardless of what they are, it seems, from what I've seen in your show, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit, you try to showcase maybe like lesser known attractions or people or things that don't get the coverage, that you typically see in what travel shows and magazines and websites and stuff. How important is it to you to kind of showcase those stories versus, like the big things that people already know about?
I try to do a little mix of both, but I do really like to do places that people don't know about or they haven't seen, or do it from a perspective that they don't know. And the way I normally do that is by just talking to the locals but really listening to them and having them tell the story, because I think it's the best way to get that firsthand information. But I think it's just really neat to be able to hear from different people in different places and then be able to share that. And so many people, they can't necessarily travel super far. So when there's content like this that, shows you something different, it expands your mind and it makes you a better person. And then you may want to, and then I found too, like there's a lot of things that are similar in different places that people don't know about. Like there's different monasteries in different places, and there's so many cool adventure activities. I mean, even we did the kayaking through the Francis Marion National Forest, and it was definitely hot that day, but it was neat because we're there going through an area where there was a Revolutionary War battle and Francis Marion was involved, and we're looking at that history. And I thought, wow, this is so cool to be able to kind of put yourself back in time. But there's so many places all over the U.S. and the world that we found, and we try to showcase that, show people again something different, and those hidden gems like you're talking about, Christian, that people may not have on their radar, but maybe they should, because they bring something different to the table.
Yeah, for sure. And, going back to the Low Country episode, you went to all sorts of different places. You've talked about a lot of them. Some stuff people may know, some people may not. But I think what's really important is you did decide to speak with a gentleman named Alfonso Brown, who led you on some tours of historic homes in the Charleston area and talked about the Gullah Geechee culture, which I think is important, in South Carolina's history, and also doesn't get a lot of discussion in travel, periodicals, TV shows, whatever it may be. So I was glad to see that you decided to do that and highlight the Gullah Geechee culture here in the Low Country.
Yeah, we had also we went to the historical market, and Corey Alston was there, and he's doing the sweetgrass basketry, but he talked a little bit about the Gullah culture and how, he's he's learned stuff that's been passed down throughout the generations in this beautiful art form, but also what it really means to be able to keep sharing those traditions. And I thought that was another interesting thing. And again, if people are walking through the market, you may come upon Corey. And if you want to take a second, I'm sure he wants to sell you a basket, but he also is happy to share his story. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, South Carolina, people are always ready to talk and tell their stories and everything. So I'm not surprised to hear that. The episode, for those listening, that focuses on Charleston and the Liberty Trail is set to broadcast on Wednesday, February 16th. So not too far away. But your show, this current season, is already underway, correct?
It is. It's airing on Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on South Carolina Educational Television. And it's also repeating on the ETV World or ETVW channel. And that's on the Charleston episode is airing again on March 12th and again at 11 a.m. So if you look on their site, there's a lot of different times and that you can actually watch the current season and then also past episodes.
Nice. Yeah, everybody can kind of binge and get caught up on everything you've been doing before the South Carolina show, which would be a lot of fun. Before I let you go, I wanted to know, you've done this show for 9 seasons and you had a show previous to that that you mentioned, and you've done all sorts of different work prior to all of that. Is there anywhere you haven't been yet that's kind of like on your bucket list, or if not an area, like a particular event or a situation, just something that's kind of like, I can't wait to do that, you just haven't had the chance yet?
So I definitely want to do more in Asia because I have gotten to do Cambodia, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Macau, a lot of places, but there's so many more. And that the food is so good and I love to eat. So I'm ready to go back to try more cuisine. But I've been really loving taking a deeper dive into topics related to history because I think a lot of times I feel like when we learn history in school, sometimes it's a little cold. You read it in a book and you don't necessarily, maybe there's a documentary, but we don't always get that personalization. And when you go out and talk to people who either lived through it or are passionate about it, and you go to those sites where it took place, it brings such a new perspective. And in this season in particular with the Charleston and the Liberty Trail episode and also my Alabama Civil Rights Trail episodes, we really looked, and also New York's Empire State Trail looks at the Erie Canal history. And that's, a big part of the formation and the westward expansion in the U.S. And I think that is those episodes in particular are great tools for people to learn something new, but also when we look at our past, it really does help move towards the future, but we kind of need that context sometimes. So I'm excited to dive into more topics related to history in some of these upcoming shows and seasons.
That's awesome. And, while you were talking, I was just curious, because you're traveling so much, how much time are you spending on the road in a given year? And I know it may vary based on when you're filming and obviously with COVID and things, but, give or take, like how often are you on the road?
So before COVID, I was gone like half of each month. Because I do have to come back and then actually like work on the episodes because I do write and produce them as well.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot of work. But yeah. So, and then I travel and speak and do different things related to, education and things like that as well. So I'm gone quite a bit. During COVID, it's obviously been different because we were not able to travel for part of it. But then this summer we were out and about all over the place, summer and fall. And I think it's picking up again right now. So I'm going to be on the road again quite a bit coming up.
Oh, I'm assuming you like it. It sounds like you like being out and doing these new adventures. Is traveling suit you pretty well?
I love it. I mean, it's exciting, I think. And I think it's really neat to explore a new place. I mean, I feel like I travel when I go around New York City where I live. I run and I bike, and I often will go to a new neighborhood and just kind of explore without anything in mind because I think it's interesting and there's so many little things that you learn about or pick up on and cool restaurants that you wouldn't have thought about if you weren't walking or exploring on the ground that way. So it's just something that I personally love, and I think it's a neat way to see a place.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Is there anything that we haven't touched on, whether it's your career or the South Carolina episode specifically or your show, anything that you want to put out there that we haven't talked about, anything that you think is important?
I was really excited with all the nice. I know people are nice in South Carolina because I grew up there, but I just think that people are so warm and welcoming, and we had such a great experience in all the different places that we filmed, everywhere from like the Old Exchange to Hop Sweet Plantation to going to Gilligan's Seafood and Mefkin Abbey and all of these different places. And I was just really excited to meet the locals in a different way from living there and growing up there and coming back. And I don't know, I'm excited for people to see the episode because I think they'll be proud of their area and their state and the history and hopefully learn something new as well. And definitely have some new places to go.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see the show. I'm sure others will be as well. It sounds like it's going to be really awesome, and I'm excited to check out the other episodes as well. How can people stay up to date, not just with the show and the South Carolina episode, but you and the work you're doing? Like, what's the best way people can connect with you or stay up to date?
I'm posting all the time on social media, including when I'm filming. So you can follow me at Darley Newman on all the platforms, and then it's Travels with Darley on Facebook. And the shows are also streaming in addition to PBS on Amazon Prime through Ovation TV on Roku and Amazon Fire and Apple TV and all those different platforms. So if you want to catch up on some other episodes, you can binge them in various ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. And a reminder, everyone, you should be watching the show all the time when it airs, but specifically the Charleston and the Liberty Trail episode, Wednesday, February 16th at 7:30 p.m. on ETV. It'll run again on March 12th at 11 a.m. on ETVW. Darley, thank you so much for joining me. This was such a treat to talk with you and learn about, your background and your show. And I can't wait to see all the episodes, but specifically the Charleston one. I'm really excited. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks for taking the time.
Of course. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks.
And that's it. Another episode of Holy City Center Radio is in the books. Thank you to Darley Newman for being our guest today. Such an awesome interview. It was so fun talking to her. I can't wait to see her show's episode regarding Charleston, but really all of her episodes. It sounds like a lot of fun. She's done some really cool things and discovered a lot. And I think you can learn plenty from this episode. It's a lot of underground or lesser known stories from cities and countries. So be sure to check her out. I also want to thank Lindsay Marie Collins for producing this episode. She's with LMC Sound System. She also has a podcast called FMB Radio, which you should check out. Thank you to Tyler Boone, who provides the music in each and every episode, and Grace Lancaster-Gogan for creating the logo for Holy City Center Radio. Thank you to all of you listeners. I appreciate you guys coming back and checking us out. You can support the show by continuing to listen, of course, and share and like and retweet and all that good stuff on social media. If you want to take an extra step to help out, offset some costs with the site and the podcast and everything else, you can go to patreon.com/Holy City Center. You can also purchase merchandise, which also helps at holycitycenter.com/shop. Can't wait to talk to you all again. I'm so excited. The show in its second year now is, I feel like we've got some good guests lined up. We've hit a stride and things are going well now that we've gotten past some stuff from the last year and having so much fun. And I can't wait for you all to keep hearing some of the great guests we have lined up. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't. Save whatever you need to do to keep coming on back to Holy City Center Radio. And I hope you all have a great week and things are going well with you. And I will see you next time. Good night and good luck.